Ghost of Tsushima was one of many games that released during the PlayStation 4 era that I think a lot of people hold to high esteem. Games like God of War, games like Last of Us Part 2, the Horizon franchise. For a lot of these games, these are some people's favorite games of all time. Now, when you look at Ghost of Tsushima alongside a lot of those games, oftentimes it falls short in a lot of people's vision or memory. So I feel like it's kind of a little always unfair to Ghost of Tsushima, which is an amazing game to its own right. But when stacked up to some other games, especially in the narrative department, it definitely falls short for a lot of people. So I kind of just wanted to go back to Ghost of Tsushima, replay it, and see if, with a fresher perspective, is this game kind of like the middle child of, I think, the Sony's first party studios that made games during the PlayStation 4 era, etc. So with that being said, this is going to be a review of Ghost of Tsushima in 2025. If you guys are, haven't played the game or anything, I will dive into spoilers if I need to or if I want to. I don't know how deep I'll go into spoilers, but yeah, there might be spoilers. So just huge heads up. That being said, like the video, subscribe, etc. Let's move on to the actual video. So for Ghost of Tsushima, when it released back in 2020, um, I was a little hesitant to get into it. Truth be told, Sucker Punch was one of my favorite studios during the PlayStation 3 era. Infamous was one of my favorite games during the PlayStation 3 era, especially from Sony's first party. Um, so I didn't know if I really wanted them to pivot to a samurai open world game. With that being said, upon release, I played it. I beat it. I definitely beelined it. I don't remember doing a whole lot of the side quests or anything like that. Um, I liked it for what I played. I definitely don't remember a lot of it sinking in as much as I think I wanted it to. With that being said, upon this replay, there's definitely a lot of things that I wish I kind of took more time and enjoyed. On this replay, it took me 60 hours to kind of play this game, so I definitely didn't beeline this game. I didn't platinum it or either or anything like that. I just kind of played the game and let it kind of flow as I felt it flowed naturally. Um, I completed all the side missions, minus some of the ghost stories. I think I lifted up two of the ghost stories. But other than that, yeah, I definitely had a more thorough approach when playing this game. Definitely a more complete vision on what Sucker Punch was doing, what they were trying to accomplish with this game. I definitely think that they pulled the Ubisoft formula and said, how do we make this engaging? How do we put our own spin on this? How do we, uh, you know, kind of just rebrand this in our own vision. And I think honestly they did a really good job. I think the first thing that I kind of want to just touch on is the combat. This game, obviously, you're playing as a samurai Jinsekai, and the combat is just so amazing in this game. The stance system is one of my favorite things that this game introduced. For you guys who don't know how the stance system works, pretty much enemies will have different weapons, and based off their weapons, different stances would be better at stunning them or staggering them. um, so you kind of like flip through your stances seamlessly through battle. You'll notice that like there'll be different colors that'll reflect different abilities to parry them or dodge them, etc., etc. um, and kind of just being surrounded by a horde of enemies and flipping between different stances was always one of my favorite things to do. It just made you feel smart. It made you feel cool and clever. It wasn't that difficult to do, so it definitely made you feel just awesome. You felt like you're getting better at the game, especially towards some of the later missions towards the end when you're really flipping through stances um, seamlessly between enemies, and you're throwing a bunch of different gadgets, and you're throwing like kunais here and smoke bomb here and like stealth killing there. Like the combat in this game, I think gets praised not nearly enough. I think more games need to look at what they did with Ghost of Tsushima's combat system and find ways to kind of steal what they can from that game. I think they definitely they definitely knew what they were doing and definitely honed in on that combat system. Um, and it just made everything feel very dynamic. There wasn't a fight that I didn't want to engage with because I loved that system. Anytime I was, in the open world and I ran into bandits, I hopped off the horse and I fought them, every single time, because that was the most addictive part of the game. Every time there's a village to save, I went and freed every village. Anytime there was an excuse to get into combat, I was in that fight. And I think that's something that I hope, moving forward with this franchise, they kind of double down and do as much as they can with that combat system, because I think there was a lot to play with. I think there was almost too much to play with, from like the different gadgets and different, abilities, etc. I think I want them to find a way to make it almost a little bit more seamless, because there would be times where I'll forget about wind chimes, or I'll forget about the different arrows that we have, etc. So I think that's one of the, like, I guess the only critique I could have was that maybe find a way to make it a little bit more efficient. With that being said, though, definitely, the crowning achievement of this game is the combat system. Whether it's one-on-one duels, whether it's fighting in hordes, it always felt dynamic. That's the best way I can say it. If I was to move away from their best part to probably my least favorite part, the narrative of the game, I think everyone kind of has their opinions on the narrative, whether it works for them, whether it doesn't work for them. For me, I like the concept. I like the idea of this samurai who has to, go and do what he needs to free, his country, or free his island. Um, that's a really cool concept. I like the idea of, this territory in Japan that's under Mongol rule, and, morality plays a big question as far as, whether or not his people agree with what he's doing, whether or not, he's obeying the samurai code, etc. Um, it definitely it definitely needed to be more, I think, pronounced. I think throughout the narrative, I think it'd be times where Jinsakai would be like, I can't just kill people, behind their backs, because that's against our oath. And then you do it, 100 times throughout the game, and it has no real ramifications, etc. Um, or not a whole lot of, I don't know, reaction, I think, from some of the people. I think when I played Infamous and you kind of like went down the bad path, like, I felt just a lot more reactivity from the world, and I guess I just didn't really feel any of that in Ghost of Tsushima. Like, it just didn't really seem to matter too much, um, which is fine. It's a video game. Like, not everything should be, impacted by the narrative. I guess I just kind of felt like they had a cool concept that could have played well with the narrative. With that being said, the overall story is what it is. Like, it's it gets you through from moment to moment. Jin Sakai as a character, I think, leaves a lot to be desired. He's not the most, charismatic human being. I think the thing that is super cool, that is probably better than the overall main narrative, is kind of just like the little side characters that you meet across. I think I like the stories that people hear about the ghost more than I actually care about the ghost himself. Whenever I hear, and I talk to like a villager or something like that, and like they've heard of the ghost, and they have this like legendary status that gets achieved throughout the game, that is super super cool. That is super impactful to the overall world building of this game. And I think that's probably my favorite part of the actual storytelling of it, is the world that they built here in Tsushima, from the side missions, from, the way that people talk about Jinsakai, not knowing who Jinsakai is, I think is probably my favorite part. Um, Even like when his uncle's in prison, and like the Mongol general or whatever is like telling him stories about what the ghost is doing, and that's his nephew, and like seeing his uncle's internal battle with that is, I think, a cool thing to see. Again, I just don't feel like there's a whole lot of payoff for all of that world building. I think they set up a lot of cool things that could have happened, and just not enough happened with them. Um, with the whole world building, we can talk about the open world. I think the open world, it was really cool at first. I think I think finding, little ledges that you could platform, or finding the shrines or the fox dens, etc. I love the art style of this game. I think it's probably one of the prettiest games I played, especially back on a PlayStation 4. Um, I think the open world was definitely done better than most open world games, especially in the Ubisoft format. I'm just not an open world person, Like, I've never been a huge open world fan. I'm definitely more into, if they're gonna do open world, I like the city style open worlds better, like a Grand Theft Auto, or even like a Infamous, etc. Or Spider Man kind of So it's just those type of things that I think I'm attracted to more than like just like a more traditional style open world where it's like, greenery and mountains and stuff. Um, but definitely this game's open world was better than most. I think the fast travel system was amazing for me. I fast traveled a lot, especially towards the back half of the game. Um, the things that make this open world obviously better was the navigation system, with, the wind telling you where to go, the little animals and critters that kind of like do the whole Disney thing where you're walking around and the fox is like, "Huh, follow me," etc., and you follow them to a shrine, etc. Those type of things are really cool. Um, I just kind of like towards the back half, if there wasn't like a mission to go find out there, then I wasn't attempting to do anything out there. So I think that's my only like. I don't even think it's a critique for open world. I think I'm just not a fan of open world like that. So for this to be an open world game that I wasn't excited for going into, or even when on to replaying this game and not minding the open world like I typically do in open world style games like this, definitely is a huge plus. I think they definitely did a great job with you know reinvigorating the open world to a way that I think other games are starting to take from now. Like if I play when I'm playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and there's clearly things that they've took from Ghost of Tsushima's open world system. It's cool to see. So I'm glad that Sucker Punch was able to kind of brand this in a way that people are gonna now take and integrate into their own games. So hopefully, this does a lot for the whole open world genre as a whole. Overall, I think the biggest things about this game that stand out was the way that they layered their systems, and that it's not just like the combat system. That's whether or not you approach a mission via stealth or via hands-on, or even if like let's say you get into a mission and you fumble the stealth part, you can go hide. There's numerous ways you can go try to hide again, and if you want to do stealth, you can do stealth. Hide again, and if you want to do stealth, this world lived in, like you random bears try to fight you, or like other random animals are trying to kill you. Um, the crafting system I think is cool. Um, or the more like collectibles you get, and like the stores kind of have different engagement for you because of that. I think stuff like that is what makes this game a lot more special than I think we talk about often in 2025. I think a lot of times people look back at Ghost of Tsushima and think good combat, bad narrative. And the narrative itself wasn't even that bad. I just think that the payoff wasn't necessarily what I wanted, but I definitely think overall they had something. They were cooking with something amazing with the world building of this all, and the way that all of it kind of felt very interconnected. All of the island of Tsushima felt like they were all hearing the story of the ghost, at the same time. And as you're kind of passing through town from town, they would see you or they would meet you. And eventually, when people start to learn who Gen Sakai is, and they wouldn't call him the ghost anymore, they call him like Lord Sakai and stuff like that. I think that kind of stuff I think was really really cool to see. And I think the first time I played this game, I beelined the story. I did only the stuff I needed to beat the game. I definitely missed out on all of that stuff. I think this time around, doubling my playtime and kind of just like playing it at my own pace, and just kind of like living and existing in this world is something that I think they do really, really well. And I think that's something that gets accomplished well with an open world style game, is just being able to really just exist, and choosing whether to hunt or to go do missions or do, side quests, etc. I think is something that this game really, really understood the assignment for. Um, Moving forward with the franchise, I hope they find a way to make a more compelling protagonist. Not that Jizuke was bad, I just don't think he was up to snuff from what we expect from PlayStation's first party studios, but definitely not terrible. Um, with that all being said, Ghost of Tsushima definitely I think it's a bad rap, mainly because of the games that it was released around, mainly because of the fact that I think it is first party studios, Sony, so we expect the God of Wars and the Last of Us, and unfortunately, even if you make an amazing A+ game, 9 out of 10, it maybe doesn't stand next to giants in the same way For me though, personally, I do really like this game a lot. I'm very, very excited to see what Sucker Punch does next with this franchise. And I definitely can recommend Ghost of Tsushima to pretty much anybody. Like it is just a all out an amazing game. Um, Anyways, those are all my thoughts on this game. If you guys have anything to add, let me know in the comments. If I said anything wrong, etc., or if you agree or disagree, etc., sound off. But yeah, I'm gonna leave that video with that. Have a nice day, you guys.